Good evening, everyone. Today we have Dr. Prateesh C Mammen, State Program Coordinator of Kerala State Disaster Management Authority, with us. And today's webinar theme is Vanishing Habitats, Wildlife in the Face of Climate Change. So we welcome you, sir.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
In this time of climate change, the effects are seen everywhere. The habitats are vanishing. So, sir, what do you think are the most critical impacts of climate change on wildlife habitats globally?
When the habitats are shrinking, or there are factors which are related to these resources, which are biotic, and also the abiotic factors. So the temperature, the rainfall, and other factors related to climate, when they are changing, definitely there'll be a resource crunch, and which will affect the species assemblages, and the network altogether. So the major issues will be related to the resources when it comes to wildlife. There are many resources. A resource which comes into my mind all of a sudden is water. So water availability proves to be a major problem nowadays when it comes to large megafauna as well as other species, other wildlife species. So water availability, we have ecosystems which are forest ecosystem, for example, are being managed by human beings. And water availability, when it comes to forest ecosystems, you have maybe water outside the forest, which is in the vicinity, the buffer zones and things like that. So definitely there will be a movement of animals, wildlife towards the buffer zones, towards where the resources are available and things like that. And definitely when it comes to other species, like small species, for example, so a lighter example of honeybee or some bees. So the major resource which they thrive on is the honey. From where they are getting these honey, it's all flowers and different plants and things like that. But when it comes to when the context of climate change, what happens is like the flowering changes, number of flowers changes, and the pattern changes. So as a human being, we are in a kind of a rhythm where we are expecting something for that. Like climate is being defined as what we expect, and weather is what we experience. So we are expecting something in one season, and we are going for it. We are doing some activities related to that season, but it's not happening when the climate changes. So for a honeybee to have some kind of honey in their possession, you have to travel more. You have to visit more flowers, but flowers are not there since flowering is affected. So these kind of smaller things also will affect the whole, impact the whole thing. There are other issues like the landscape issues, like the forest fire and things like that. Definitely, that will also affect. So it's all about the habitat, the activity budget. We call it activity budget of a species, and also its home range, where you will get resources for thriving yourself, surviving yourself. That's getting cut, that's getting limited, and that's how the whole system got limited, and the number of species will also decrease.
Yeah. So you talked about this habitat scenario, and you are the person who is actually working on field. You know what the ground reality is of wildlife and the condition of the forest. So, sir, how does habitat fragmentation it exacerbate the effects of climate change on wildlife?
Yeah. Again, it is linked to what I have already mentioned. When it comes to resources, and for resources for the megafauna, you need to have movement from one area to another. For example, an elephant, which I was mostly working on on these kind of human nature interactions, how people are responding to the wildlife and things like that. So when the habitat fragmentation happens, it's like it's good to, I mean, you have some resources, you know that some resources are there, you're going for it, you're looking for it, but then unfortunately that is not there. Like some bamboo species, some kind of species assemblages and things like that for the megafauna, like the elephant, or for some, for that sake, some other, for carnivores, some other herbivores. So this kind of resource based movement is always there. But you are suddenly experiencing that the habitat itself, the way when we are moving is hindered, definitely that will affect the whole scenario. So it's like a risk condition from a species point of view, or kind of a more complex. The situation becomes more complex. So when you are having a biryani and you are having a situation where you have limited resource, you will definitely opt for a biryani, which is not inside the forest, which is maybe outside the forest. I mean, this is from a very layman's point of view. Outside the forest, there might be some kind of plantation which can be opted as a resource for having something. And also, there are some kind of check dams and bunds in the vicinity of this agriculture area where wildlife can go and have water. So it's a complex issue of different things, and definitely habitat fragmentation exacerbate. It's a risk condition from the wildlife's point of view. It's a risk condition. And also another thing is we as human beings are becoming, since habitats are fragmented, we are becoming more angry towards wildlife, or we just don't want to have coexistence. And even this reminds me of my study during my PhD. I was thinking about when people are more educated, people are more, having more money, you will be very concerned about wildlife, and you will be concerned more about having a network, having a coexistence with wildlife. But that's not the case. Maybe it happens in an urban setting where people are more interested to go to a wildlife area or a forest area, but it won't happen in other areas. So this kind of coexistence also will, it's a problem. And definitely, I was going through Sanctuary Asia's one picture. The picture is titled Lynch Mob. One crowd of people, major crowd chasing two elephants. It's a reminder of all these things. Like when there is climate change, when there is scarcity of resources, when animals are moving out, we just don't want to coexist with them. So, and it also reminds me about the recent COP16, which happened in Cali, Colombia. It's titled "Making Peace with Nature." So it's high time that we should have peace with nature.
Yes, sir. And sir, from nature, mostly when we say climate change, we think, okay, fine, our ecosystems. With the word ecosystem, it's always, most of the time, the first thought comes as forests. So, do you think are forests the only ecosystem which are at a great risk, or other ecosystems also like marine and the
Definitely, definitely. Definitely. Since my work was more on forest, I was discussing these things since it's near to my heart. But
Yes, sir.
definitely,
Okay.
the coastal ecosystem, which is, I mean, both a threat to the fauna, wild fauna, as well as the people, because the coastal erosion which is happening and other hazards which are happening on the coast, and also the ocean pollution and things like that which are limiting. And also, I mean, there are other factors like the even the, I mean, temperature rise, and due to these temperature rise, there are events which are happening, like the cyclones and things like that. We don't know how these kind of events are affecting the wildfire. We know that, okay, these events are affecting people here on the land when it crosses, I mean, when it is having a landfall. Since I'm working with the disaster management, I can, I mean, probably tell all this. But how it is affecting the fauna and other flora of the marine organisms, we don't know. I mean, how they are changing their life patterns, we don't know. So those kind of studies have to be there, definitely. There is another important ecosystem which has to be focused is the freshwater ecosystem.
It
Being
is, yeah.
a person who is residing near to a wetland, which is Ramsar site in Kottayam district, the Waimland wetland. I mean, when I'm thinking about my kind of childhood days, a lot of species were there, at least for, I mean, my kind of encounter with these kind of fishes and things like that start when you have things for eating. So when you go to a local market, you can see different kind of fishes, even the catfishes with the mustache. And I mean, from a child point of view, but go now, I mean, it's like two, three species which are prominent, which are kind of
Huh.
very commercially viable and things like that. Other species are not there. I mean, why they are not there, we don't know. And I mean, apart from that, it's all about the change in the land use also, because all these are wetlands.
Yeah.
So these things are there. Definitely, the more vulnerable habitats, like the grasslands,
Yeah,
and
sir. And
because all these,
sometimes these wetlands are inside the forest ecosystem only. Yeah.
yeah, and even outside the forest ecosystem, what we used to think, even in from an economic point of view, is all these are wastelands. So there is no purpose for these kind of lands and things like that. For example, there are wetlands which are, I mean, which are habitat to different species of birds and other things. I mean, different even aquatic fauna and things like that. But we used to generally think that it's a wasteland. So what you need to do is a wasteland has to be filled with soil and some construction has to come. But China is thinking in a different manner right now. They have this kind of sponge cities where, I mean, the wetlands are being demarcated, and that will act as a kind of a nature-based solution for
Okay.
the flood risk mitigation. So this
Yes,
is
sir.
the importance of that kind of vulnerable ecosystem, which is wetland. Grassland again. Grassland, what is the use of a grassland? I mean, you're not getting timber. You have only grasses. So we used to think that, okay, it's a wasteland. So it's easy to change these landscapes also. I mean,
Yeah.
land
We
use
have
change.
changed many grasslands landscape in these years.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So these vulnerable landscapes definitely will get affected more due to climate change, as well as and these landscapes have certain endemic species, and as well as some species which were, I mean, not even counted. I mean, in the sense, not even enumerated. So that's very important. Enumerated in the sense we don't know the status of the species. I mean, how much it is there. We know the species is present, but we don't know the status of the species. So definitely the climate change will affect these vulnerable landscape.
Yes, sir. So definitely. And sir, you told us about how the landscapes are changing, how the loss of biodiversity is actually affecting all these things. And we have seen that there are measures like we hear that these are the measures which we are taking, government is taking. There are so many international collaborations, and we even see that the result is not, the outcome is not how it is expected to be. So, do you think that these things, preventing all these things, should be small geographically or individual countries driven thing, or international collaboration is an important thing in tackling this climate driven habitat loss?
Definitely, international collaboration will help us. I mean, when
Yes,
it
sir,
comes
since
to
you yourself are working with UNICEF, so
hmm,
you think these international, when we collaborate with international
yeah,
organizations, we get to learn more, or is it beneficial?
definitely it is beneficial because you need to have more global South partnership. That's what I think. Is, global North is much more different in terms of the vegetation there, or in terms of the economy there, and in terms of people there. I mean, much different. So you just can't think about example. I mean, have details about examples of global north and try to implement that in the global south, because here people are there, more people are there. The economic factors are different. So more global south corporation will definitely help in these matters. I mean, how Brazil is tackling or how Bangladesh is tackling one situation, that will definitely help India to have a different thing. But when it comes to other developed countries, definitely, I mean, some points are good, but the whole point is when you deal with a project which is related to biodiversity and things like that, it's always related to people. It's always related to you.
Yes,
So
sir.
this is very critical in terms of these kind of corporations and things like that. And another thing is our, I mean, common psych. I mean, the people, how we are thinking. If you ask anybody that, do you know COP, COP? Definitely they'll talk about COP, which is related to climate change,
Yeah,
the Paris Agreement, or even the
yeah.
recent Baku and things like
Baku
that.
content,
They
yeah.
don't know, but they don't know anything about the biodiversity COP. I mean,
Yeah.
which happened in Cali, Colombia. So, I mean, for us, for the general public, the biodiversity is a lesser important thing. Uh, so, I mean, I was just thinking about one kind of an incident which happened. I and my friend, well, very close friend, but he's working in banking sector, was traveling inside a forest, and he was like, "Oh man, this is like a large forest, and why these trees are just lying there? It's lot of area. I mean, why we need these kind of area? I mean, there are people, who are outside and they don't know, they don't have even a place to set their home. So we should utilize this kind of
Oh,
areas which are unutilized. So his thinking pattern, I mean, is like that. So what is the use of having forests when I'm here? Or what is the connection of a forest species? I mean, I
yeah.
started my work with Nilgiri Thar. So, and during my masters, so I was even this species is very much related to the climate change impact, because all these, I mean, the specialists, the specialist species and generalist species are there. all these
Yeah.
specialist species having resources which are very limited, and they are very choosy, and also
They don't
they are
adapt
they
much
are
also, no?
yeah,
Yeah.
correct. They are very particular about habitat. So this Nilgiri Thar is an endemic mountain goat,
Yes, sir.
which dwells in the high altitude mountains in Western Ghats, and its ecological kind of a counterpart is the Himalayan Thar. But Himalayan Thars are found much more higher altitude. So I used to think, what is the purpose of in my beginning of my work? I used to think, what is the purpose of having Nilgiri Thar there? How Nilgiri Thar and I are connected? Mm, Nilgiri Thar is there. What is the purpose of me conserving Nilgiri Thar? So this kind of process should be, I mean, there always to understand. So that is what is lacking right now. That is why, I mean, you need to think in certain things in an economic sense, and also the people centric, and also how it is related to me. And otherwise, you will be like saying, okay, this whole forest area is just, I mean, useless. I mean, we need to utilize it.
Gave actually of a person from an urban area coming to the forest ecosystem and giving that perspective was a starring, very contrasting to your work. For you, listening to that thing would also be a very different thing. Like you wouldn't have expected someone to say that because you it's your workplace and you know the importance of it. You've studied about it, and the people who do not have any knowledge about it uh, tend to take it very lightly, the ecosystem, the conservation of biodiversity, and all these things. So, the message which you have given, the key points which you have told to us in this webinar are very important, and we thank you for the same. On the behalf of my team, I want to thank you for this session, sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.